Oh, okay. To continue the conversation, or just have a continuance of this conversation, and actually think about steps that we can take as individuals, as an organization, as well as things that you can take back to your universities and other organizations. So thank you for doing that work. I have been really scanning the chat, and along the lines of research, I'm really seeing a lot of conversation about Black, Indigenous, and other people of color being a part of the research process. And I think, a point here that I really want to bring our attention to is that, it's not enough that people from these communities are participants, right? We're not, we don't want to be in this position that we're still doing two groups, right? We're doing with. So these people from these communities should be research partners and not simply research participants. I'm seeing a lot of talk about creating space for students to be able to have these important conversations, whether it's something that's set up formally in your program or not. These are conversations that students should be engaging and issues that they should grapple with, because these are not episodic, as Dr. Anvarizadeh mentioned earlier, but these are very real issues and challenges that they will face much, much longer, even after graduation. And so, and with advocacy and justice, similar things, like really putting ourselves, okay, sorry, I'm reading some of the comments. Really putting ourselves in position to use our knowledge, or what's been thrown around a lot in the profession, our unique contributions, right, to tackle these really, really large issues. And so, I mean, it's clear from the chat that you all really took this task to heart and dug deep and thought about ways that the science can begin to redress issues of racial equity in our discipline. So I'd actually like to invite our panelists to share some of their favorite discussion points and strategies that were shared at their groups. If they're with us.
Absolutely.
I'm here.
Okay.
I think we all are. I'll start. One of the things I think, I would just, echo a point that I think, Dave Thomas, Mr. Thomas mentioned, and that our good colleague Frank Cronenberg has written eloquently about in his response to the Journal of Occupational Science. We need to say the words. We need to use the words. We need to have a way of stating them out front. Use systematic injustice, use systematic racism, talk about it, expect it, put it in our expectations for writing, for our textbooks, for our assignments. We need to use the words.
Mm-hmm. I think that also one of the things that's really important is not to just, we talked about this afterthought, oh, we have to have individuals of color in this research because, it's the thing right now, this afterthought, but having the landscape assessment is what I mentioned, is examining the history and the values of the community, the culture, the neighborhood, the people, involving in them in the research throughout the entire process, right? Helping that influence the study, the behaviors and the responses of the study. And more important, it helps you really understand the power difference between the research and researchers, and they really must determine whether community members have agreed to participate in the research. And we have to look at them as partners in this entire, throughout the entire process, not just as part of at the end result as the study, right? So also I think that helps you define the research problem. And that's really, really critical, is you need to help. I think that it ensures that their perspective will really help you define what the focus will be, and then more importantly, it helps you create the study design and the way you're going to collect data. I think that is really, really critical from having them part of being partners in every stage of the research study.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, and I think building on Frank Cronenberg's and Elwani Ramakunando's idea of collective occupations, I think as a collective, all peoples, we need to understand and interrupt systemic racism, a redistribution of power. I think that's important, and privilege, identifying privilege, understanding your privilege, but also using the privilege to help the people who are not so privileged. That is important, I believe, because otherwise, we'll be hearing the same voices all the time. If we look at clinical practice, we need the so-called non-traditional voices to add to the knowledges, because our client group, they are diverse. So we don't want to homogenize people. What we want to do is to broaden our understanding of people as occupational beings. And we can only do that by introducing other knowledge systems, empowering other people from diverse backgrounds to contribute to these knowledge systems and hold these knowledges as authentic knowledge. Doing the research with the communities instead of on them, so they can be co-producers of these knowledges. I think that is critical for occupational science. And we can use that as an instrument to provoke social change.
I think we also talked about the importance of funding as well for this work, which is important too.
Yeah, and to tie both your comments together, I know something that was discussed in our research group is, that our academic journals are essentially the gatekeepers of knowledge, right? And sort of rethinking and reimagining what products of scholarship can look like. So to Dave's point, to take or to partner with our communities in producing these knowledges, we also have to hand over the power to them for what the products can look like. Where are we translating this to? How are people being exposed and how is it being taken up? And on the funding end, are you paying them for their labor? And so challenging our beloved sacred texts, is what Karen Wally-Hamill refers to it as, these journals and our texts and everything else, that is not the only location where occupational science knowledge resides. That we have to really be mindful and open to understanding products of scholarship in ways that are not traditional or not conventional.
In our group, we also spoke about this idea of success and merit. Who's entering the gates of the academy and what constitutes the requisite qualifications? We understand that people come in with different life loads, and if we're looking at the normative qualifications, that might discredit a lot of people from some backgrounds entering, but that doesn't mean that they can't become good practitioners. So it's about providing greater access, but as Vincent Tinto says, access without support is not opportunity, right? So providing access and supporting people, empowering people so that they can become a better version of themselves. We spoke about the need for us as a profession to ensure that we embody that as well. That's really the embodiment of enabling persons to participate in occupations.
Drs. Anvarizadeh or Munoz, do you have anything you would like to add to that before we entertain questions?
Do not. I'd like to hear some questions.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I am going to call on Dr. Jenny Womack if she could share any questions that may have come up in the chat for our panelists. I think we have time for
questions. Sorry, we don't currently have any questions in the chat, but I encourage people to.
Oh, Jenny, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little bit. I think I heard that we didn't have any questions in the chat.
Correct. We don't have any questions in the chat currently.
Okay, well, that's all right, because I have more questions. In our discussions about students and education and what it is that we are doing to really help our occupational science and occupational therapy curricula pivot, I'd really like to hear from you all on what competencies you believe are really critical for students to develop awareness and application of occupational justice. I think it was Dr. Munoz who mentioned earlier that, it's not enough for us to just offer a seminar or a course, right? This is something that they have to continuously get, just not inside the classroom, but on field work and other places to really commit these things to practice. So then how is it that we can really help our programs transform so that it does become practice?
We discussed this in our group a little bit about the ACODE standards on how they've changed since the 2011 version, which actually had a standard on occupational justice as a requirement for teaching and assessment. However, in the new standards, for those who are program directors or faculty may know this, but that's no longer the case. It's been removed from the standards and there's no longer a requirement to teach occupational justice in our OT education anymore. It's gone. So because of that, it's going to be hard to move the needle, I think, on these topics unless programs are required to teach them.
Thank you for sharing that, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a real issue. Like I said, if it's not made part of the standard, it's not going to be on the forefront of our minds.
So maybe an action item for us is to write how we would like to see that standard worded or rewritten, because I think it is a good example of using the language and integrating that language in spaces where it has the opportunity to, in this case, force the hand, force action. If we say that our textbooks need to cover these kinds of things, then publishers need to include that. If we say our accreditation standards need to include these kinds of things, we can slowly change that discourse in real ways. So I love that idea of looking at where the power exists in those accreditation standards. A lot of power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In my statement when I started, I said one of the things that we really need to look at is accreditation standards, because it also includes field work. And I do believe we have to prepare our faculty also in being comfortable having the dialogue and the conversations in the classroom. We also have to prepare our fieldwork, academic fieldwork coordinators to have the skill set to address when racism happens in field work, which is very, very real and happens across this country currently. And there's a lot of sites refusing to take students, and preparing fieldwork coordinators to know how to address those situations. So it is continuous. And what I believe is that the classes, like we have said, cannot be just one class. It cannot just be an occupational science class focused on occupational justice within a few weeks of the semester. There has to be threads of inclusive pedagogy and cultural changes and paradigm shifts that happen throughout the curriculum the entire time the student is in OT school. In addition to that, it has to continue in field work. And beyond that, we have to provide safe spaces for students to be able to express themselves and their diversity such as organizations, student organizations like the COTAD chapters that we have. These are critical to make sure that students feel supported, they feel heard, they feel valued, and they are learning how to be culturally responsive practitioners.
I want to, before we, because we're getting close to the end of our time together, there is a question in the chat that I do want to pose to you all, if you could just, take about a minute or so each to address it. And that is, how do you suggest that white educators and researchers build the confidence to address this with students and in their research?
I should address that first. I believe in a therapeutic relationship, I think the most powerful tool, empathy. That power of listening and understanding the lived experience and authenticating the story as the truth for that person who's articulating it. And I believe this is standard across race, class. So if we look intersectionally, intersecting identities, with race, Black male, Black female disabled, Black female disabled, queer, all these intersecting identities bring with it its own sort of violence, potential for violence. But listening to these narratives and understanding them and accepting them as that person's truth, I think that's the first port of call. Because then if you can understand that and empathize, then you can probably move towards this idea of operationalizing some form of strategic change. But if you're discrediting these stories as inauthentic, and you're holding fast to stereotypes, it probably won't work, right? This whole idea that we are constructing here probably won't work.
I agree with what Mr. Thomas is saying. I mean, you can't teach what you don't know, and I think that's the crux of this question here. Is like, how do I learn to teach that better? And I think it's about the relationships you have. Who do you have coming to your dinner table? Who do you hang out with? Where do you go? What kinds of things do you get involved in on your own? We're asking our students to do these kinds of things to constantly evolve as cultural beings in the world, then the kinds of things that we do to address our own growth and development as cultural beings in the world will help us be able to communicate that in the classroom in a better way. And when we can't, I think we bring in folks that can do that. We create assignments that help students do that. And one of the things this group might do is collaboratively create some of those tools that might be ways to help us all learn to do a better job at producing graduates who feel competent, not only culturally, but feel competent in their understanding of the way the world works, not just their world.
Well, I do agree with both panelists, and I do believe that we need to have an honest conversation about where we are historically and where we are currently. We've been teaching from predominantly white pedagogy by predominantly white faculty to predominantly white students for a very long time. So to say that, yes, we need to have these conversations and faculty need to be prepared and this and that is absolutely what needs to happen, but it's the training and the confidence behind that. And so I do believe we need to be strategic during faculty meetings, during faculty retreats, during providing opportunities to actually bring in people to train, to have these discussions with other faculty of color, to bring in experts to help start understanding how we can decolonize the classroom. That includes the people who are teaching it. And I think that when we can be able to have these conversations amongst each other, amongst faculty, that we'll feel more confident and prepared when we're in the classroom. In addition, it's very important to invite guest speakers to be the experts from those and sharing their lived experiences from those specific backgrounds in your class. And I think that is one way to really start feeling like you are contributing to creating inclusive pedagogy, by inviting these individuals, and not just individuals of color, to speak about equity, diversity, inclusion, but also to be experts in practice settings like pediatrics, mental health, and older adults. I think that we don't only have to be the individuals speaking about DEI, but we can also be individuals who are experts in practice as well. This gives representation a very clear sight for students to see and to experience and to feel, and can also change their lives, which is what I shared about the research experience I had.
Yeah. And thank you all so much for just sharing that and offering some recommendations. And honestly, in hearing you, the things that were coming back to me were really on our SSO USA website, all the things that we say we value, right? And manifesting those in our action to build community, to be, collaborative, and to use our knowledge for, humankind. And that's, I think, the crux of everything that we've talked about today, right? Coming together, being honest, historicizing our understandings, and dismantling them, and doing right by, what it is that we say that we're going to do. Trying to put that all in a nutshell. But I know there are a lot of questions coming through the chat right now. I really want you all to hold on to those and transition with us to Twitter, because we are unfortunately right at the end of our time together. And I, again, just want to, say on behalf of the Society and the Board of Directors, thank you again to our amazing panelists who gave of yourselves for our learning today. It's not easy work. And we're also asking you to do this over 3 hours. And Dave, you in particular, it's, no, we're past dinner. We're like past bedtime, at this point. So thank you. Special thank you to the SSO USA Ad Hoc Conference Committee, which includes Drs. Mariana D'Amico, Kendra Heatwell-Shank, Ryan LaValle, Jenny Womack, Janine Blanchard, Charles Christensen, and myself for organizing a space for us to come together to talk about racial equity, and the SSO US Board of Directors for sponsorship and support. I also want to extend my gratitude to COTAD, the Coalition of Occupational Therapy Advocates for Diversity, for their support and assistance in marketing this event, to our technical and social media support teams. Y'all, without Janine, Jenny, Ryan, Adam, and Daisy, I'm not sure this event would be nearly as fabulous as it has been. Like, we are not just on Zoom, we are touching multiple platforms at the same time. So special thank you to all of your hard work behind the scenes. And to our donors and supporters, and to all of you who attended, thank you. So I'm gonna turn it over to Mariana real quick.
Oh, see you in St. Petersburg. Be there, be square.
Yes, y'all, please save the date. Our SSO conference will be September 23rd through the 25th, 2021. If we meet in person, it will be at the Hilton St. Petersburg Bayfront. And I'll also now turn it over to Dr. Frances Connolly to give us some parting words from the Board of Directors.
Thank you so much. I cannot thank the panelists enough. This has been a really important and rich conversation, and I hope we continue these important conversations, but not just the conversations, but we make them into actionable items. And it sounds like we have some great ideas already forming. So thank you so much to the panelists. Thank you to Dr. Johnson for organizing this and leading us, moderating it, and leading us through it. It's been really, I have pages and pages of notes and ideas and thoughts, and I just could not be more grateful. I, at one point, noted we had 162 participants, and I think that really this speaks to how important this topic is, to explore and make implicit the need to use a racial and ethnic equity lens to inform our research, our curriculum, and our practice. So looking forward to seeing everybody in St. Petersburg. Hopefully we can have some more town halls and mini conferences about this, and people have been able to make connections that to continue these conversations and perhaps research initiatives. So thank you so much. Looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Connolly. All right, everyone, like I mentioned before, we're now going to transition to Twitter for our racial equity tweet up. Now, to participate, follow SSO USA on Twitter at OCSI_USA. Your profile must be set to public so that others are able to engage with you. If it's a private profile, we won't see your comments. Please remember to use the hashtags OCSI and SSO, virtual 2020, and have fun. Dr. Adam DePrimo is ready to continue the conversation over there. All right, y'all have a good evening. Thank you again.